Let's fast forward to the Royal Rumble. It goes down January 19th. We've covered this in long form in the archives, but we'll briefly mention here. Bret comes into the Rumble match number 21 and eliminates Lawler and Diesel. He also eliminates Austin, but the refs didn't see it. So Austin snakes back in and he throws Bret out. At the end of the match, Bret goes over to the commentator's table and starts yelling at Vince. So this is the first time it's really been done by a wrestler. And this feels like the seeds are starting to be planted for a Bret heel turn. Is that the only reason that would have happened, or what's the thinking at the time?
Well, we're experimenting with it at this point, and it was a natural. It just worked. And the other funny thing was, you and I just watched this match not long ago, and watching the build of Stone Cold Steve Austin and how over he was getting. And in those matches with Steve and Bret, the audience, they were leaning towards Steve. They loved Steve's promos. They liked his work, and Bret was he was coming off whiny and bitchy, being Bret. Bret was turning himself heel in his promos. So you go with it.
Of course, the original plan was for Bret to win the Royal Rumble, but Vince Russo spoiled that. We covered that on our Russo episode and in our Rumble 97, if you'd like to check that out. The next night in Beaumont, Texas, Vince tells Bret what he wants him to do, and Bret thinks he's going to be killed off with the fans if he does it, but he does it anyway. He does a promo where he says, I was screwed out of my title match with Sid by Shawn Michaels. I got screwed at the Rumble by Stone Cold. I got screwed by the WWF. And then he points at Vince and says, I got screwed by you. And then he quits and walks through the crowd. Later in the show, Gorilla Monsoon is making a match for the next In Your House to have a final four match with the winner wrestling Shawn at WrestleMania, and he invites Bret to take part. Of course, Bret comes back through the crowd and accepts, and then starts to fight with Austin. This feels like you guys are experimenting in a big way here, because this has never really been done before. Let's kind of run you through what's going on at the end of January. They're all over the place: Oklahoma, New York, Philadelphia. And Shawn is getting wins over Bret and Sid in triple threat matches. And on January 25th in New York, they do a Shotgun Saturday Night taping. And this is where Bret beat Mankind by DQ. And I believe this might be when we had a fun one-liner from Terry Funk.
Well, no, I wasn't. Your mother's a whore. But I go back to, and these are the little things that the audience and the fans don't know and don't understand too. Was Bret had reached a point where you ask everybody to be at the building at 1:00, so you can do pre-tapes and promos. You've got everyone there, and it's just, that's what time you show up for work. This Saturday night's main event, we were in Webster Hall, I believe that's where it was, and we're waiting on Bret to get there. It's his first Shotgun Saturday Night. We go live at 11:30 or whatever it is. And Bret shows up at 11:00 for a live show. And it was little things like that he constantly did and would show up to the buildings. Everybody else would have to be at the building for a 7:00 show. You need to be there by 6:00, and he would show up at 7:30. So there were just different instances like that were continually happening that made it more difficult to deal with Bret than everybody else in some instances.
Yeah, that's going to be a subject we cover here in just a minute. Bret showing up late. On January 31st, they do a Sky Dome Raw taping, and Meltzer wrote, the best part of the show was the Bret Hart-Shawn Michaels confrontation. It was acknowledged that this was in Bret's hometown, because the entire country of Canada is one town. And they did this on commentary to explain why Shawn was being booed. In the match, Shawn would pin Bret after Austin interfered. The next couple of days, they did double shots in Montreal during the day and in Ottawa at night. It was again a triple threat match with Triple H getting a win over Bret and Austin. Of course, both of these shows have Bret working in the main event in this triple threat match. So Bret would say he's set to go on last, and he shows up about 2 hours before he needs to be there. According to Bret's testimony, he says the first match is just now in the ring, so I'm 2 hours ahead of time. But he says when he gets there, Austin catches him by his arm and tells him that Shawn and Triple H were making a big deal about Bret being late. And he also says that Shawn has been trying to drive a wedge between he and Bret. And Steve says the way Shawn was doing this was to say that Bret had been asked to put Steve over a few days ago in Toronto, but Bret refused. Well, Bret tells Steve that's just not true. Later on, Pat came to Bret and told him that Vince would like to put Hunter over just to show the boys. Bret said he didn't mind doing it one bit. And then he said, but when the boys you're talking about happen to only be Shawn and Hunter, it does bother me. So, Bruce, the way this is presented, it feels like Austin's a straight up dude. Bret thinks the rules don't apply to him and he can show up whenever. And Hunter and Shawn are shit disturbers. Do I have this about right?
No, it wasn't just Bret and Shawn. It was everybody, because everybody had to be there ahead of time, and everybody had to be there. Like I said, if you're supposed to be at work at 9:00 in the morning and you show up because, well, I don't have an appointment until, my important work isn't until noon. So I'll show up at noon. But you want people there at 9:00 for other things, and they need to do personal appearances. They need to do meet and greets. They need to go over their matches. Everybody needs to be there. And if those are the rules, then everyone should abide by them.
Well, just to be clear, I said, Bret doesn't think the rules apply to him. And you said no. And then you
no.
Exactly
you said, is that clear that Shawn and Hunter were the only shit disturbers, and that they were the only ones unhappy that he didn't apply by the rules? And I said, no, everybody was upset. It wasn't just Shawn and Hunter. Everyone, including the agents who were frustrated looking for Bret.
Maybe you missed the part where Hunter and Shawn have said that they told Austin, hey, Bret refused to put you over the other day in Toronto.
Okay. And is that in Austin's book or something?
It's in Bret's book. That's what
okay. It's in Bret's book. So again, it's hearsay, rumor, and innuendo. I have no idea if that happened or not. When we're talking about Bret's professionalism and timeliness and showing up late, that was something that perturbed everybody, especially on TV days when you're trying to do pre-tapes and you're trying to do a million other things, and the talent doesn't show up till 30 minutes before the show.
Are we allowed to say anything critical of Triple H on this show, or is that?
No, yeah, absolutely you can.
Okay. It's just going to be hard when your lips are glued to his asshole. That's all.
Well, my lips aren't fucking glued to his asshole.
Well, I just said he's a shit disturber because they're putting it in his head.
No, you're saying that fucking Bret said something. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea. Did he say it to me? No, you made the implication that they were the only two that were upset about Bret being late, and that wasn't the case.
I didn't make the implication. I'm saying that Austin said they were making a big deal out of it, and that they said he refused to put him over.
Okay, that Bret said that Austin said that. That's my point. I don't know, because I didn't hear Steve Austin's conversation with Bret Hart saying that.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So the next day, Bret calls Vince and asks him, where are you going with me? And Vince says, you'll probably think this is crazy, but you'll screw Shawn this Thursday at Lowell TV, so Sid wins the belt. Then in the Final Four at In Your House, Shawn will screw you out of winning. And from there, Taker will work with Sid at Mania for the belt, and Shawn will put his hair up in a ladder match, and you'll cut it all off. Bret said he was a bit stumped as to how casual Vince was, and he says, so it's not me and Shawn at WrestleMania for the belt? And Vince says, it's too predictable now, I'm changing it. Bret said he could see this for what it was. Shawn had refused to work with him or put him over, and it changed everything. Bruce, I'm a little confused here. I kind of assumed that everything I just laid out was the plan in reaction to Shawn just losing his smile and forfeiting the belt, which we're about to talk about. But what the fuck happened here? This was the plan before that?
Well, no, it was Vince sitting there looking at, and Vince loved Sid. God damn, look at that big bastard. And thinking of, there's the guy, we can go with and make him a champion. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, shit, he's a heel. And Shawn losing his friggin' smile in the middle of all this shit. And I've got a bad knee, and I've got to go home and go do the promo. I can't work. I can't go out and drop the title tonight because I've got a bad knee. So I get in the ring. I'm going to say that doctor won't let me, but I talk about losing my smile. Yeah, it fucked up shit royally.
February 7th in Pittsburgh, we'll
punt.
see Bret and Sid beat Austin and Michaels. And then 6 days later on Thursday, Raw Thursday, we see Shawn forfeit the title in the ring to Vince and Gorilla. We've talked about this a few times on the show, but